Okay. Well, welcome. Hi, Becky. How are you today?
I'm good, my dear. How are you?
I'm good. She just said she was muting right before we went live, so I had to ask her a question to make her unmute. She did. So anyway, but I want to welcome everyone, and especially our guest this evening is Renay, and Renay is part of the BNC team, the community team, and so. We're really glad she's here. She's one of our coaches. And so I'm just going to kind of jump in and let her kind of introduce herself and just share what she feels like sharing. So, Renee, welcome. Thank you for being on with us.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. Well, let's see. I have come to the BNC community because of my relationship with Becky over 3.5 years, I think now. We met on another platform. I had the opportunity a couple years ago, to go out to Nebraska and visit her, so that was really fun. So it's the real deal. So that was a lot of fun. I had come to the platform that we were on at the time, always interested in health and nutrition, various aspects of all of those things, always trying to have better my own health. And probably about 10 years ago, I struggled with what ended up being some thyroid symptoms and treated that, did keto, you know, healed from a lot of things that were bothering me at the time. And then when 2020 rolled around, I was on just a little bit of thyroid medicine at the time, and I was doing great. I had like peripheral neuropathy from low thyroid. Like I had pain everywhere. And within a week, especially in my feet, of being put on 15 milligrams of thyroid in 2017, all that pain went away. It was miraculous in less than a week. But that's a whole other story about other than how I became involved in some of the things that we're doing now. So in 2020, I was on a little bit of thyroid. I was proceeding in a great direction with my health, feeling pretty good. And in March of that year, I got the big pandemic smack in the face before it ever became, big with my community. So on March 3rd of that year, I got sick. I thought I was having a stroke, which I had no symptoms ever before of high blood pressure or tachycardia or anything. Went to urgent care, and they were a little bit panicked. They wanted me to decrease my thyroid, which was not the problem, and they didn't do any blood work or anything. But I did that because it was really scary. I had tachycardia, and it was really kind of scary. And so I ended up going to my nurse practitioner right before shutdown. She wanted to do Holter monitor. They were very, very concerned about the symptoms of tachycardia. But at the same time, I was telling them I was having trouble breathing. Long story short, I ended up with long C at that time for nearly 6 months. And that's a relatively long story because I got sick at the beginning of March. I saw one physician. I was treated over the phone for months. By the time we got to the end of May, the very beginning of June, I was chronic. I felt like I'm a registered nurse. I did pediatrics and NICU for 20 years. And I felt like what my asthma patients had always described to me. I knew something was like really, really wrong at that point in time. But in April of that year, I felt like I was dying, literally, and I was tachycardic for months. And so in April of that year, I really started buckling down, started following things like Sean Baker, other people that I knew that were healing themselves with a really clean diet approach. Did that, met Becky, got involved with that. I think it was actually earlier than that even. And so, but I got my certification in April and just really worked really hard. My lungs are 100% healed today. That story is a very long story. My diagnosis from my pulmonologist in June of that year was interstitial lung disease, and that doesn't heal. That's basically COPD. You don't get better. You have to have biopsies to diagnose it. But I really attribute that to going a full carnivore diet at the time and working really hard with a functional medicine physician, because regular healthcare was not helping me. I'd been kicked out of like some of the like I went over to get a CT scan, and because I had a pending test, they kicked me out, made me stand in the parking lot, unable to breathe with my paperwork. So it was quite, it was quite a journey, and it was quite a thing. I have a lot of empathy for people who have to navigate the healthcare scene, because I worked in it for 20 years. I'm highly educated in what you could do, what you should do. And then when all of these things happened, it really highlighted some of the broken areas in our system and some of the ways that you have to advocate for yourself, because sometimes you can't get the help that you need in the areas that you would think so. So then you kind of have to bring the personal responsibility back to yourself and say, okay, what can I do for me? And so shout out to the Lee Clinic here in my town. Dr. Megan Lee was very helpful for me, and she was functional. She was my doctor before that for thyroid, but she really, really helped me. And it was because I did things like glutathione and took NAC and, all of these different things, along with her supporting the fact that I was full carnivore at the time. And so that was really, really helpful to me. So that's the short story of how I ended up here. I was a nurse for about 20 years. I've been married, oh my gosh, like 27 years, together like 31. And gosh, I can't even count anymore. I have some young adults who are springing themselves into different jobs and having a lot of success in things right now, and going to community college nearby, and a 13-year-old. So it's all teenagers, and things are flipping around, and I'm starting to come back into like, okay, well, what can Renay offer the world? So here we are. But my struggle is real. Like, I'm always like trying to find that silver bullet, or figure out how to make everything feel better, because I'll struggle. Like in this area, Lyme disease is horrible. I've had to deal with that, different types of things. And so all of that is interesting. And there's so much to my story of healing all the way around. So many different things, little tiny, minute diagnosis of, when I had the C, they sent me all the way to infectious disease. And so it was quite a journey. So I really got to understand how people get stuck. So here I am all these years later, doing better. I still struggle with my weight. I still struggle with, keeping schedules or doing my fitness pal, but the struggle is real in that area. But I also have really come to the knowledge that while I'm not where I want to be, I'm not where I used to be. And if I wasn't doing all of these things, I'd probably be extremely unhealthy, bedridden, 400 pounds. So, for some of us, it's not, we just take out a drink or take out a particular food and everything is better. For me, it's an ongoing approach to keep doing things that are healthy, keep doing things that are what I love about Becky's thing, beyond nutrition. Because sometimes the nutrition aspect for me, I get frustrated because it's difficult for me, not because of what I eat, but because if I don't have my thumb 100% on nutrition, I gain weight really easily. So sometimes I have to relax and do other things that are healthier, like nature, or my dogs, or reading, or I just started buying plants and naming them, traveling, taking the pressure off of things, because we get so focused on food sometimes that's not great for me. So sometimes I have to pull back, reset, but just keep moving forward. So that's kind of part of my story.
Which is a wonderful story. I mean, like you said, we've known each other over the years, and what you've gone through and how you've transitioned and blossomed into creating more of this well style, wellness and the different areas. And I love the fact of, you buy the plants and you name them and talking to them and, that whole aspect, because you're right. Nutrition is one piece of the foundation, but it doesn't build the full foundation, right? So it's just one piece of it. And we really got to look at all of these other areas and how, that works in regards of like autoimmune or, these areas that we can end up in reverse, but it does take beyond, I was one of them that I was in a meeting earlier today and I made that comment about my autoimmune. Yes, it got better, but it really got better when I looked at all these areas beyond the nutrition, right? It was part of it, but when it can really show, and that's kind of, where you are with being able, to pivot and transition and moderate some areas where, you don't have to be completely, dogmatic in one way of eating. You're able to kind of pivot and adjust.
Yeah. Yeah. And it becomes the thing too, where I really have recognized that it's a lot about where I am today. I'm not where I was. I've been better and I've been worse, but it's that constant, it's like sticking to it. It's a different kind of consistency. Like you're very, very consistent in like everyday routine.
Mm-hmm.
I have never been highly routine. I've never really had a high intense routine. Even when I was a full-time nurse, I worked night shift 3 days a week or 4, and they were scattered. And then I was PRN and it was scattered. So I've never been a highly routine kind of person. So it's coming back to like building on different types of consistencies. So over these years, whether I've been keto or whether I've been carnivore or whether I've been fasting or whether I've just been low carb or whether I'm trying out all the new donuts in town, I always come back to still staying in the vein of, keeping different things in check and coming back to center, even if I get off center, if I fall off the train and get back on, or I have too much sugar and I have to change it, or I'm eating too late, or I'm not sleeping, or whatever it is, you have to come back and get right back on the path again. And so many people get really discouraged and they can't, there are too many rules, sometimes too much dogma in certain areas that they can't pick back up. And so I love to encourage people because everybody has such lives. They have kids and jobs and broken cars and repairs and events and family members. There's all these things going on in people's lives. So coming back to center for people. And that's what's been really nice about the online communities that Becky and I have been in, and now Sherry, is that it's a good way to come back to center and to find people who are like-minded, who want to stay on some path of wellness, whatever that is, whatever your wellness and your lifestyle looks like together. And you have to meet it together. And that's what I see with a lot of clients I've had over the years, is a lot of them are honestly like me. And I think that's the other thing that I've had to come to terms with too, is you got to be who you are so the people that are looking for you can find you. Because I am not 22 with a hard body right now, deadlifting every other day, not like I did when I was younger. There's a different area right here. And so being really real, being honest with my own struggles or my own failures or my own starting over again, all of those things, I think, and sometimes I think we've talked about this too before, but I think it's important to validate where people are. Sometimes in coaching, people just want you to listen to them. Their family's tired of it. They're not getting anywhere with their doctor. It's affecting their work, whatever it is. And sometimes we just need somebody to validate us for 10 or 15 minutes and say, you know what? It sucks. It sucks that your body is betraying you. It sucks that whatever's going on is happening. Feel that for a little while, and then try to figure out how to make some strategies to dig out of those pits. And I'm finding that's ongoing. So anybody who ever thinks that that's finished, when you come to a particular way of eating or a group or a supplement or a new drink, whatever it is that people think is going to be the silver bullet, it's just not really there. It's a continuous a continual, it's like Sisyphus. Just keep pushing. You got to keep pushing it up the hill. And like Jocko Willink would say, if it ever stopped coming back down the hill, I'd just push it up again. I would just start it all over again, because you need that struggle. So I guess struggle is good. The caterpillar will die and not become a butterfly if you help him out of the cocoon. So some of our struggle is good. It helps us. It's helped my humility. I'm a much better friend, a much better person, a much better coach, a much better mother because of that.
Well, you're more relatable, and they can end up and relate to someone that is, and that's, part of what we started this YouTube channel, or turned it into, was real people in the discussions, right? We don't want to end up and be someone that is, pretending like we're on a pedestal, or we want to be those real people. We want to be relatable. We want to discuss our struggles and our mistakes and how we've learned and we've pivoted and transitioned, and that's very knowledgeable. And I don't think that anyone is, like you said, it is done, right? It's a journey, it's a lifestyle, it's the well style of our own individual, and none of us that are on here or watching, or even those that are going to watch the replay, may end up and do it the same. But I think being able to relate and take advice, or suggestions, I should say, of, hey, this is what worked for me, try it yourself. And that's kind of where our meetings at BNC go to. Is, I know you do the brain body health and wellness meeting. If you want to end up and kind of talk a little bit about why you started that, or how we come about that name and looking at the body as a whole.
Yeah. I think that you picked the name, but it probably was because of something we discussed before. But it's fitting, because I do love the neurology. Like, my first nursing job in Washington, D.C. was a neurology floor. So it's kind of been a full circle thing to come back to really looking at how our brain helps us be healthy. And everything we do, everything we say, all these, it's all brain. It's everything affects our brain. And so in the meetings right now, I haven't gotten really academic. We've been like sticking to, maybe we'll do that more as the schedules come back in September for everybody after summer. But I've done some things in there of just about laughter, like telling jokes, and how that helps your brain. It helps your nervous system. And Kevin had added the breathing, like how we breathe when we laugh. And so it was really cool. He was in that meeting that night and was able to talk to that. Or the other day we did purpose. So we're looking at like how like in that one, we were looking at how purpose affects the brain. There's less incidence of Alzheimer's. Older people who continue to work don't shrivel up, as long as you're, keeping your brain going, and you have some kind of purpose, and you can go out and do things. I'm kind of forgetting some of the other things that we've done. I did have a list of them, and so I'll post them in the community. Like recently I went to a silent retreat, and so we talked about its effects on the nervous system, and didn't get really too deep into like prayer and things like that, and how they can affect your nervous system. But definitely sounds in nature. Like, we did one about sounds, where it was about like honeybees, like they play in the note of C or something. And I used to keep bees, and so if you're in the hive, like, it's a very particular sound, and how it helps your nervous system. So at this silent retreat that I went to, it was at Holy Cross Abbey in Berryville, Virginia. And it's Catholic, and there are monks there. I'm not Catholic, but this is like a retreat center, and you can go by yourself, and you have a room, and then you're out in nature. They have like 1,200 acres there, and it's right along the Shenandoah River. And so one of the things that was really interesting there is they have a cemetery that's considered to be a natural cemetery in this cool spring battlefield, but it's on their land. And it's where there's not big headstones or anything. It's kind of like in the forest, and they have small stones, like they look like river rock, and they'll have their names. But the road that went down through that cemetery, because it was forested, the sounds in there, there were so many birds, and there's no noise around the abbey, like it's very quiet, and so you could hear all the birds, and you could feel that on your nervous system, like getting that whole thing about being in sunlight. I grounded there, like all of those things where your nervous system is just coming into alignment. But we also talked about, for me, how hard it was to be in silence. That was its own unique stressor for various reasons. One was because you didn't want to disrupt the liturgy and the reverence of going over to the chapel and being too loud. You were very conscious of all the noise that you made. And then you didn't want to talk to any, ask dumb questions or bother people who were trying to be there. So that was an interesting kind of, I felt like I needed definitely more than 2 days because I didn't even get to my inner dialogue. The noise, the silence was deafening in a lot of ways. It was just kind of interesting, but it was also very interesting to your nervous system. But the best place was being in the sounds, going over and being in the sound. The animals were even different there. I walked up to a skunk. He just turned on and looked at me. It was hilarious. And I love skunks. So he just turned and looked at me. I'm like, hello, Mr. Skunk. And he's like busy and didn't respond. So just being silent and being in nature, being quieter, paying attention to small things was kind of great for the nervous system. And that's one of the reasons that I did it. So we talk about some of those things, and sometimes we just have conversation. And as we build and grow, and people say, hey, can we learn this? We'll probably go in some of those directions. I have a lot of books that we can take, and that we can take information from. The other thing too is like learning like little meditative practices. We did something recently that was really easy, where you pat your lymphatic system before you do sauna or just in general, and it kind of helps you release. So there's something real specific, but this one particular thing we did, and it's in the communities, it was how to go down your body to just pat some of the areas where the lymphatic system is, so that you can release toxins. And that's good to do before activities or sauna or just in general. So those are some of the things that we're doing.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely about, sometimes, like you said, taking it back to less is more, and being able to reconnect with, the intuitive side, or the, ancient practices that have kind of gone by the wayside, and reconnecting those in a functional way. Obviously we're, modernized humans, right? We're not going to be able to constantly live in nature as much as I love nature. We're still, have lives to live in this world. And so being able to incorporate those two and make it more of a wellness or a lifestyle practice.
Yeah. So those things are good too. And the other thing too is, when I'm talking about meeting people where they are, like some of us do take some medications, or we do rely on a supplement or whatever it is. And some of those things are, people can't live without certain medications. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to be supportive to those people too, because in these kind of communities, people hope that they can get off of all of their medications. That's always a great goal, depending on where we're at. But it's not always the best ideal for that to be the goal, because you have to heal and you have to get healthy enough. And so an example of that would be, over the last few years, kind of doing things with my thyroid medicine with my hormone specialist. At one point in time, I had to do some adrenal cortex with thyroid, with progesterone, to make it all work in conjunction with one another. And the whole HPA axis, all of that was a little bit out of balance for me. And it really made a difference to work it together. So for years, I just was taking a little bit of thyroid, but recently I decided, my hormones had dropped significantly. I had a huge increase in pain. I could not sleep. And I started taking some progesterone, some bioidentical progesterone again. My pain has went away. I'm sleeping better. My dry mouth is almost gone. I went to, the dentist, all these things, like trying to figure, but a little bit of progesterone helped me. And then there are some flavors for that where people can go really high fat and heal their adrenals or heal whatever, but sometimes that takes a little bit of time. So if you need in the moment, if there's some way you can help yourself get to the next stop, that's an important thing too.
Yeah, being very realistic about the supplements do have their time, their place, their purpose. Medicine is, the modern side of things is there as much, and blending those and figuring out how to work amongst, each side of it is very beneficial. And like you said, we're obviously not against that. If someone needs a supplement or someone needs a medication, obviously we're working towards health. But if that can end up and make them feel better and help them, progress, then ultimately that's what we're after.
Yeah. And it's not a failure to need help.
No.
Some people feel like they've really failed if they need whatever their medication is. If it's a little bit of insulin because they're type 2, or if it's a little bit of hormone because they're menopausal. I mean, we have all these endocrine disruptors everywhere you go. I mean, I was in the store the other day I wanted to buy a particular brush to do something with my hardwood. And I'm down there and my husband's like, are you going to do a commercial here? I'm like, this is the aisle. This is the fragrance aisle. So if you want a whole bunch of endocrine disruption, you come here and you breathe. I was being funny about it, but it's the truth. Like, it's everywhere. And I'm like, gosh, I'm going to need like a glutathione injection just to walk down this aisle. And that's another thing after the big C. Like, I can't do fragrance. I never had that before until then. But fragrance sometimes makes me feel like I'm, being held underwater. And I feel great. My lungs are great, but I still have that kind of response to it. It's very interesting. Where other people lost smell, mine was like heightened, like way heightened. But we have all these things in our environment that we cannot always avoid. So we try to avoid the things that we can. But sometimes our hormones are really whacked out. And you can be doing a whole bunch of things right and still need a little bit of help until your body can adjust. Like, I took adrenal cortex for a long time and then I didn't need it anymore, but then I went through a really high period of stress and I was able to take it again. And this is not a commercial for going out and taking adrenal cortex, because people shouldn't just, what worked for me, whether it's iodine or progesterone, like, we have to be really careful that people don't latch onto that stuff and start doing those things themselves. And then they get themselves really out of whack. So we got to be careful with supplements, all of that stuff. You got to be careful when you're fasting. You got to be careful when you're transitioning to carnivore. You got to be careful when you're keto. It's best to find a provider that can help you, because if you're on significant amounts of medication or you're a brittle diabetic, you got to have some help. And so health coaches are there to help you find what works in your lifestyle so you can stick to the goals that you have. And there are some areas, and maybe you'll start putting those out there, like some physicians online and stuff that support these kind of goals with low carb, keto, carnivore. I know Sherry's specifically seeing someone here in my town. It was the Lee Clinic. She was, she's very malleable to what your diet is doing and how to help yourself in that direction. And all those things matter. How is your doctor going, Sherry?
Going good. Got about, I think, 5 weeks left with him. We did I did a 16-week program. The big thing that my goal was, of course, was to be able to reverse and stop taking my type 2 diabetes meds. I no longer take those meds, but
Awesome.
I'm still watching the blood sugar like a hawk, because it's going to take a while for it to come down. It's come down significantly in the last, I've been off of the medicine now for about a month, and I've seen it reduce. But I've also seen some other interesting responses to my body that I would have never known before. One of it being I am very heat intolerant. Um, didn't I know, right?
And you're in Texas.
I'm in,
Wow.
that's it.
Oh
I'm in
no.
Texas. I mean, like the actual temperature today was 103, and grounding right now, going outside in the daytime is very difficult because I'll see my blood sugars jump 40, 50, 60 points, and it stays there for hours unless I do something like take a, I jokingly say a cold shower. You don't take cold showers where I'm at. The cold, I have it on the coldest setting. It's like a warm, a warm shower, but it still works. I mean, I even put ice on. I got the things around my neck where it's cool and things like that to help. Would have never known that. Also, learning about, yes, breath work. Breath work has been huge in that area. So it's interesting that as I stopped needing the medicine, which, I very much did, now it's looking beyond the nutrition. My nutrition is dead on. I am meticulous with my nutrition. However, it's everything else. Like you said, a little bit ago, it was like, well, you have to look around you, and I have to figure out how to get back to that center, right? Like you were talking. And so it's interesting. But yeah, the doctor that I hired, and we will in fact have him on our podcast. He has definitely agreed to come
Yay.
on and talk to us. So that'll be exciting. And if he wants to talk about my case in particular, I'm one of his more, he called it stubborn patients, and not because I'm stubborn, my body was stubborn.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting for him as well as me. But it's taken all this time to kind of work on it. But to find someone, a medical professional that's willing to work with you is a huge battle. Um, my previous doctor to this one, when I said that I'm doing keto, carnivore, blah, 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 and she said, well, if you want to lose weight, I can put you on Ozempic. And it
Yeah.
was like, well, tells me that it's time for us to part ways, because I was already sitting there at that time with an A1C of 6.2. So, and I know I feel for people coaching and things like that, where that's a real battle. That's difficult. And you mentioned that that you went through those struggles as well. You were lucky enough to find, who was it? The clinic you go to?
I go to well, I've gone to a couple, and there have been even my oldest doctor who isn't practicing anymore. She actually did her residency kind of with me, and so I knew her. She put me on Armour Thyroid way back. So I had a couple medical doctors who were great, but in trying to heal a little bit more, I'd sought out a hormone specialist. And so we have a place here called the Lee Clinic, and it was a doctor and her dad for a while. Her dad passed away, and so she's taken it over. Her name is Megan Lee, and she's in the Winchester, Virginia area, and she does stuff online too. And I haven't really talked to her about this, but I know that she has patients from all over the place that she does phone consultations, etc. with. And so that was very helpful to me. She's been very helpful to me. And you're not, it's cash based, but you can do it with your insurance. You can submit your own insurance, but I felt more like a person with some of those physicians than with others. And so that's very That's, an interesting kind of way to kind of look at it. Like, you want them to know who you are and remember at least something about, what you were doing. And so that's unique, because it's hard to find. And to the defense of the medical community, they're kind of locked into a bunch of stuff, one way of thinking. And, they're always afraid they're going to be sued for X, Y, or Z. So they're trying to stick to the script, and literally the script, the one that they write and the one that they have to say. So it's difficult. I mean, and I worked in that genre for a long time. And so in the last many years, where I've been looking at alternative therapies and alternative medicine, I still have a lot of empathy for what was my life and my profession for a very long time. And I kind of miss it. And I don't know how I would ever go back into that, into the healthcare system to even work. It's really one of those things that I'm struggling with right now, because I'd kind of like to go back, but I my ethics wouldn't let me do it at this point. So I'm kind of stuck. But there's still a place for medicine. And we're in a unique time in history where we have, you have to think insulin was only discovered in 1921. I mean, that was a unique time in history. Before that, you fasted a lot or you died if you were type 1 diabetic. And so, that's just 100 years of having insulin. So we're at we're at a great time in life where we can help save diabetics' life with insulin, but at the same time, we're telling them to carb count. And so they're type 1, and some people say this can happen, but they become more insulin resistant than they're basically type 2, because nobody's saying, hey, you shouldn't have cake. That's bad for you because you're type 1. So it's difficult. It's difficult.
Yeah.
The other interesting thing that you were talking about was how you're heat intolerant. I had a conversation with a sweet friend today, and she was talking about how I was continuing to talk about, I've gained some weight. I'm trying to get it back off. I've got to really get myself balanced out again. And she's like, oh, I've been doing this and I've been doing this, and it was exercise. And I'm like, that doesn't always work for me. It drives my cortisol way up. Like when I had babies, I breastfed all my babies. I gained weight with all of them. I had the moon face. My cortisol did crazy. All of my friends were over here looking like Olive from Popeye, and I'm getting a moon face, and I'm breastfeeding too. But it wasn't doing the same thing for me that it was doing for the person beside me. And it's hard to accept that, because you feel like your body has betrayed you. You kind of feel humiliated in your skin, like, really, I'm not eating more than you. And I'm not, sometimes you are, like, sometimes we can really dial it in. But I think your case is really interesting too, because your diet is completely dialed in. And then you're finding that you don't have the same loopholes as the person beside you to like get it all evened out. So we're different. And that's where validating somebody's struggle comes in, because sometimes we keep going back to the same doctor and they're like, they don't believe that you're not eating X, Y, and Z. They think, well, go do more exercise. I did that. I did CrossFit. I did all of that stuff. I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning. I did all that. And I didn't have the results like the person beside me. So it's aggravating. That's aggravating. But then there's times where you feel better. So you get out in the sunshine, you take your dog for a walk, you plant a tomato, you go to the grocery store and you buy more meat, and then you buy a plant if you're trying to stay carnivore. You try to find all the wins that aren't based on the scale or what your gene size is, so that you can be functional. I'm getting close to 50 now. I want to be a great grandparent. I want to be functional with my grandkids. I want to be able to go bike riding with my grandkids and things like that. So I have to take some of the emphasis off what my weight is, or how, what size clothes I'm wearing, and start really really looking at the functional aspect, making sure that there's movement. And when there's not, when you can't move well or there's pain, then you have to redirect all of that stuff. And you have to say, okay, I really gotta I gotta, we get into like carnivore or sometimes even keto if you're doing like fat or you're doing low carb or you're doing AIP, whatever you're doing, Whole30, whatever. You There's always a huge benefit to journaling what you're eating. And when we're not seeing results with some of that, sometimes we have to start looking at what are our macros. Because even on I think Dave might have said this recently, but even on a full carnivore diet, you can gain weight because whether we want to say calorie is energy or whatever we want to say, across the board with all diets, I think the research still shows that it's a calorie deficit. So people are like, oh, I'm not counting calories and calories don't matter, but they fasted for 3 days. Well, you were in a calorie deficit for your whole week because you fasted so that's where journaling comes in. Maybe you don't realize you're creamer if you're carnivore, creamer if you're keto. Like that's the dessert. That's that dessert. And for some people, that's the ticket to weight gain. And I have to reevaluate those things too. But it's not the same for everybody. You get in the sauna, your blood sugar goes up. You do ice, your blood sugar goes up. It depends on who you are. And sleep. Like I went 20 years night shift. Like I'm still learning how to go to bed. And so if your hormones are that's why I started taking progesterone again, because I'm like, okay, will this help me sleep? And it did. My back pain got better. Like it's weird how my body will do things. So we're very unique, and I'm sleeping better now. And my dry mouth is better now. So that was helpful to me. So now I can go back to really focusing on nutrition, trying to get to bed, getting up in the morning. I don't know if I can do sunrise. It's early right now.
Well,
Do you do sunrise? Do you do sunrise, Sherry?
No. Are you kidding? As much as Becky would
does.
like me to do
Becky.
sunrise, I get up and go out and it's already daylight, right? The sun has already come up, but no, I don't make it. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I'll do better
But
in
I'm
the winter
still
with that.
doing something, right? I'm still going out and at least getting that more morning sunlight. I mean, not the sunrise, but I'm doing that. But what I find interesting is your check engine light came on with your different symptoms. And you have been able to, well, I had back pain and this helped. I mean, the sleep, you needed to do something because we all know how super important sleep is. Like if you're not sleeping, everything else can go in the trash can. Like forget it. So your check engine light, you're very in tune to that.
Yeah, I've gotten more in tune to it. And it's amazing to me. My friend Mary, who is in our BNC community, will sometimes be like, it's interesting to me how people don't know anything about their check engine light and it's just on and they don't know, they're not recognizing. And her thing has always been, yeah, it's like people can walk around with a rock in their shoe or many. If there's a rock in my shoe, I have to stop and get it out. And some people don't even recognize it because, and sometimes it's life circumstance. They're not allowed to be ill, or they're humiliated by their illness, or they've got to press on, they're a single mom or whatever it is, they got to keep moving, and they're not being able to be attuned to what it. Sometimes I think I'm over attuned to some of it too, which can also be a problem. And so it's trying to just keep that in balance. Yeah.
I think you made a good point though, right? We need to be able to do what we can structure in. So as much as I speak of the sunrise, as much as I speak of a lot of these practices, now, yes, the calories look a little bit different, when we kind of break it down a little bit more. I kind of take it more into like the quantum aspect of the electrons and getting the grounding and, the protons that we get from food, especially out of season. And really, ultimately, if we can end up and put practices into our lifestyle, into our well style, into our journey that are going to help us with our hormones, regulating our leptin, regulating our cortisol, regulating our insulin, and really helping overall also the melatonin aspect to help with sleep. If we can really control those four, a lot of these other ones may end up and fall into place or at least align. Not to say that, some of the other aspects or the other practices may not have to be put in there, but that's where also, the coaching and I know we were discussing your coaching profile earlier, into, this wellness journey and being able to adjust and pivot and transition and be realistic of what, someone's able to do. Because if I would say, no, you've got to do, 10 different things, but you're a busy person and you've got kids and that's not really your thing, how likely are you to end up and stick to that type of a structured routine?
Right. One of the interesting things is in my house, if I get up in the morning, I have to go down two sets of stairs to get out into the sunlight. Okay. And so if I'm having I've done this a couple times. If I'm having a slow kind of morning and I don't even feel like going downstairs, to drink my coffee before the 90 minutes that you're supposed to wait, all of these rules. But anyways, I have one window, I have a couple windows, but I have one window in my bathroom that opens, and I'm like, okay, I want to put my contacts on, but I haven't been outside yet so I'll just go over there and open the window. And sometimes it's only a minute, but I'm like, my eyes, like trying to get some sun to try to help myself reset so that I'll go to, so that I'll be tired or earlier. But it's even little things like that. And it's one of the things that we talked about the other day too, was learning the computer system with BNC, which it's great that you do the onboarding now, because I went to that too, because I'm like, gosh. And so all of our questions are helping other people and helping you, because then you'll know what questions are coming up. But it's the consistency of the simplistic consistency of logging into a platform that you're using, whether it's like I'm just trying to set up that calendar or any of those things, that you just logging. I'm like, okay, I got to make a list of a few things, and I got to log into those each day and find a couple things consistently. Because if it's 2 weeks before I go back to setting up a calendar or logging into BNC to look at where the circles are or how to communicate with people, you forget. And so it's the same thing. Like if you have a window that you can open and you can get a minute of light into your eyes, that's helpful. Little trivia. When I first started learning years ago, when I first started learning about sunlight in your body, I loved that one of the guys who was one of the first people to recognize some of the light, maybe you would call it light codes, but I don't know exactly what he called it. But his name was Peter Light, and he found out that our fat cells have some of the same receptors as the light receptors in our eyes. And I always thought that was the coolest thing, because his name was Peter Light. So that's like, if I could get on Jeopardy and they would ask me that question, that would be good.
Which, yes, there are receptors in the skin, which is why, in some of the meetings, you'll hear me say, get the skin in the game, because it's not just about getting the eyes and the signal that is through our eyes, but yes, the signal through the skin, as well as getting the feet connected because of the magneticism of the earth and being able to gather those electrons and stuff. But you did bring up a really good point of the community. So of course, just like we've done with the other coaches, we are offering a 50% off if they use your name. And so they can come to any of the meetings, and anyone new that, really doesn't know, they can go to the onboarding meeting on Friday. But they can also end up and catch your meeting on tomorrow. Your Slice, Kevin's are all coming up tomorrow.
Yeah. That's groovy. Fun. I think it was Sly who said her name had never been so
valuable,
worth so much. I think I caught the tail end of her interview, so it was kind of funny. But yeah. But the bottom line though is it's a journey. It's a journey, and it's sometimes it's been hard pressed for me to recognize that I haven't arrived, and the older that I get and the more interesting the struggles become. And here in this area, like, it's ticks. Like every other day I'm like, gosh, we can't seem to get away from ticks around here, which was really interesting. But I didn't get any ticks even walking through really high grass over at the Abbey. So I don't know if they have a special prayer. Maybe I should find out what it is. I'm not even kidding. because like there's so many ticks in this area. And then you've got to worry about all the tick-borne illnesses and wondering if you still have them, you know. And that's the other thing too, is like menopause reactivates things like EBV, all kinds of stuff that'll attack different things. And so we've just got so many unique challenges going on to try to get people healthy. And so I guess that's my message to most people, is be really realistic with what you commit to, so you're not feeling like you're failing, and commit to the things that you can make work the most for you. And I love the whole idea of well style. You know, what is your wellness lifestyle? Like, what can you fit into your life? How can you change your pantry? How can you help your kids change what they're choosing? You know, can you pick something different in the grocery store? How can you do that? Can you go to local farms and support local farmers? And if you're eating vegetables or whatever, if you're eating pie, or can you make it with the best ingredients in your area? Can you support the honeybees in your area? What can you do to make living a wellness lifestyle better? And then if if there's an occasion or something, like I think Sherry's going to wait till December to have tres leches. I mean, make a, and their choices. Like, people will say, well, cheating. No, you're not. If you're making horrible food choices that you're not cheating. Because when people cheat, they're trying to get something out, and that doesn't happen. But you can make choices. So we have a lot of power over what we're doing. Addiction is another thing. Sly does that really well. I've learned a lot about that. So there is true sugar addiction, but then there are people that are able to moderate, and you have to live your life. Like, you have to live. I've coached mothers who are like, my son talks to me the most when after a game we drive through McDonald's. And no, do I want to promote seed oils? No, but like, we live in a world where when we start saying none of this and none of that, people don't hear us anymore. You know, they've got to see the changes in us, and we're responsible for what we're doing and how we get. But you know, if you're trying to connect with your kid and it's he's going to go to McDonald's anyway. So if you're trying to connect to your kid, you might drive through the McDonald's with him. You might get a hamburger. You might just get the hamburger. You might get nothing. You might whatever. But we all have to make choices to live in as much wellness with the lifestyle that we have as possible. And that's kind of where I'm trying to live, and encourage people around me to live like that too, so that we can really enjoy our life, but be really functional. I mean, I want to live a long time. I want to see my grandkids get big and all of those kind of things, you know? And so the fragility of our life is really impactful too. So we have to take a lot of, and we've seen that over this pandemic, like, life is fragile. And so we have to try to do the most that we can do. And it is a little different for everybody. Some things are staple, but the whole thing is a little different for everybody. And so I really love being able to support people to make the changes. I mean, sometimes small changes are huge for certain people. Like, some people, it's just one little thing and they feel so much better. Just one, and this is interesting in coaching. I find that one of my favorite questions for people is, what worked for you before? And they forget. They forget that they used to knit, or they used to love a trail near their house, or they used to go to a certain restaurant that had really amazing seaweed salad or something. You know, they forget something that made them feel good. They forget because they're so bogged down. And sometimes just reminding people what worked for them before. Oh, it worked for me before when I put my alarm clock across the room. Oh yeah, when I was plugging my phone in at night in my closet, I was getting better sleep. Little tiny things. People know about themselves that they need somebody to help remind them. And then you can send them an email later that week. Hey, are you doing that one thing that you knew helped you before? You like a certain mug and you pushed it way back in the back of the cabinet. And that water bottle is the one you always drank enough water when you use that water bottle. I don't know where it went. You know, buy two, whatever, you know what I mean? Like those little tiny things that aren't even nutrition. So I love Becky's Beyond Nutrition thing. I love that. That's been so freeing as for myself and as a coach, because it's everything. It's not just one thing, it's everything. So it's good stuff.
I think what I love most about you, Renee, is your passion and compassion shines through.
Oh,
I
thank
know
you.
well, you're welcome because I'm very drawn to you. I might not make your meetings, but I am definitely listening to the replays. And I learn a lot from you. And I want to
Oh,
say thank you because it has been an absolute pleasure to get to know you. And I have a feeling we're going to be friends for a very, very, very long time. So,
yeah. I have a feeling you're going to have to come here to cool off in a few months.
right?
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. It's good. And it's been really fun too, getting to know Becky. And, it's always that silly thing you see people, thank you, like Chippendale, thank you, no, thank you, thank you, no, thank you. They'll get on these podcasts and thank each other for 10 minutes. But becoming, first meeting her as a coach, and then having some coaching with her, and then bouncing ideas off of each other, and me supporting her as she changed a little bit from carnivore to more of keto, and watching her journey and watching her then go into quantum, different things like that, and bouncing ideas and staying in touch and having mentorship with one another, friendship, and then community is a big deal. I mean, it sounds very I don't know what the word is, but it gets a little Chippendale. Thank you, no, thank you, but it's true. And so I really appreciate Becky because she keeps kind of forcing me back into this space. Because when you're doing health coaching and you're not feeling very healthy, or you've gained weight and you're not looking, you're looking like that meme that they put up with all the health ministers. You're that person, and you're like, okay, how am I going to help people? But I am able to help people, even though I'm not at my absolute best. I mean, I help people. I always say this. My kids get such a joke out of, like, when we're like in a supplement aisle or something and somebody's trying to buy something. I'm like, oh no, don't get that one, get this one. And just helping the next person, like just helping somebody out, because you've been through enough trial and error that now it's free for them. And that's kind of great. But I appreciate Becky pulling me back into this space, because I do feel, coming from nursing was my calling. And so I feel a disruption in that. My kids are getting bigger. Like, how am I going to help people? Like, what's still my calling? So I might almost cry because it keeps pulling me back into this space. And I'm real humble about it, because it's a very difficult thing when your body betrays you, or you try really hard and you can't get to where you think you should be. And then you want to represent wellness. You want to promote wellness to other people. And it's kind of hard to do it in the space that but it's like, I am so humbled by my own failures. I think it makes me a better coach.
It
It
does.
makes me a better friend. But it's not always the place. I'd rather be like, doing like the body and whatever.
But
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 I'm not
how
doing that.
but I think we need like a big old, BNC meetup. We all just need to come together. I know we've talked about a couple different occasions where we're all going to get together, but it has turned into a true, relationship, down to the friendship of being able to say that you are a friend, not just, a coach on our platform, not my platform, our platform. But you are truly a friend, and you do have the passion to end up and help someone. And that's where we need the people that are, those real people, and people that can be related to. And that is truly you, sister.
Oh,
You make
thanks.
that doable.
Thanks. It can be a struggle. The struggle is so real. But it's real, but it is real. And people can do better. Little tiny changes make a big difference. So I'm happy to support people who need support. It's important. It's important. Good
Absolutely.
stuff.
Any final words, my dear? Where can people find you other than the BNC community?
Right now I'm mostly on Instagram at really Renay Hartman Well Style. I have some other ideas. You know, Becky's doing all these crazy things, so I'm like, oh, I need to I need to do something. So I did do an LLC, things like that I hadn't thought, you know, that I had kept. So I'm being pushed a little bit in that direction, and it's probably really good for me. But I'm not a great self starter sometimes with all these things. So I'm trying to learn I got to log into everything every day and look at it and, you know, play with all the numbers and figure out where the buttons are, things that I don't really love. I would just rather read books. I think I'm at like 137 this year. Like I would just rather read and escape and sit on the porch and enjoy summer. But in order to help people, I've got to learn the platform and things like that. So that's all consistency too, a different type of consistency to keep all that stuff going. And that's another thing about health is continuing to do stuff, find new things that you like. I am a certified plant killer, like certified. I have murdered ivy. Yeah. And in my house, like dead. So I haven't had plants for years. And so now I had started telling my clients, instead of buying like other things in the grocery store, I started saying like, go just buy a $2 plant. They've always got plants on sale if you like plants. A lot of people do. And so then I started buying plants, and now I'm naming them. And my husband's like, oh my gosh, how many plants are you going to buy? And so here we are. So
Awesome.
learning something new, doing something different, finding it's like small joys in life is a big deal. Like we have to keep that spark. Like as we get older, we have to find out things that keep our joy, because we want to support kids and grandkids and buy them plants or whatever. I'm not even a plant person, but I'm buying all these plants now. But it's kind of fun, you know, like learning something new. So keep learning and keeping your brain sharp. But other than that, yep, you can find me at the BNC, and you can find me on Instagram mostly. And maybe I'll come up with some new things.
Awesome.
But I appreciate you guys.
Always evolving. I love it. And absolutely, like you said, end up and find us at bnccommunity.com. For those watching, make sure you end up and like the video, comment on the video. It does end up and help us to get this exposure out. And we will be back on YouTube next Monday at 7 p.m. So we'll be here every Monday. Right. Thank you, Renay. Appreciate you. Have a wonderful night, Miss Sherry.
You too. Thanks again, Renay. And we'll see everyone next week. Don't forget to subscribe. That way you know when we go live each week.
Awesome.